Under the quiet stretch of early autumn, the town of Willow Creek still carried the scent of pine and damp soil after a long night of rain. The air was crisp, filled with the faint echo of distant crows and the hum of life beginning again after the storm. In the farthest corner of town stood an ancient oak tree, wide, gnarled, and silent, its bark twisted like the wrinkles of an old soul. A golden retriever named Max trotted down the muddy path with his owner, an elderly widower named Harold Bennett. Harold had been walking that same trail every morning since his wife died 2 years ago. It was her favorite path, she used to say, because the old oak looked like it had secrets buried inside it. That morning, Max stopped suddenly. His golden fur stood up, his nose flaring, eyes locked on something near the base of the oak. "What is it, boy?" Harold asked, tugging gently at the leash. But Max didn't move. Instead, he barked, loud, sharp, and urgent. The sound echoed through the trees. Harold frowned, stepping closer. The bark of the oak had split slightly, revealing a strange bulge beneath the rough surface, as if the tree was hiding something within. "Probably a squirrel's nest," Harold muttered. But Max growled again, pawing at the dirt, circling the spot like something alive was trapped inside. Harold's hand brushed the bark, and he froze. The surface was unusually warm. Not damp, not rotten, warm, as if it held a heartbeat. A chill crawled down his spine. "Come on, boy," he whispered, but Max barked again, louder this time, forcing Harold to step back. That night, Harold couldn't sleep. The image of that lump haunted him. The warmth, the shape, the sound of Max's desperate barking. It didn't feel right. By morning, curiosity and unease pushed him to call the local police. "Sheriff, this may sound foolish," he said, "but there's something strange in the old oak near Hollow Trail. My dog wouldn't stop barking at it. I swear I felt heat coming off it." Sheriff Daniels, a broad man with weary eyes, sighed softly. "Heat from a tree, Mr. Bennett." "I know how it sounds," Harold replied, "but, please. Something's not right." By noon, the sheriff drove out to the trail with 2 deputies. Harold and Max waited by the path, the dog already pulling toward the tree as if he knew they were coming. When they reached the oak, one of the deputies knelt and touched the bark. "He's right," he muttered. "It's warm." "What the hell?" The sheriff drew closer, inspecting the strange bulge. The surface had a faint outline, like a shape pressed into the wood, smooth in the middle and rough around the edges. He called for a thermal scanner from the car. Moments later, the small device beeped softly. A bright red patch glowed on the screen. "There's a heat source inside," the sheriff said quietly. "Could be animal remains, I guess." Max barked again, more frantic now, tugging on his leash until Harold could barely hold him back. "Easy, boy," Harold murmured. But the dog wouldn't stop. The sheriff sighed and motioned to the deputies. "Get a chainsaw. Let's open it up carefully." The sound of the saw cut through the forest air, mingling with Max's anxious growls. Wood chips flew as the blade bit deeper, the old oak releasing a scent of sap and thyme. Then suddenly, the blade hit something soft. The sheriff stopped. Everyone went silent. "Careful," he ordered. The deputies pried the split open by hand, widening the hole just enough to look inside. Then one of them gasped. "Oh my God." Inside the hollow trunk was something wrapped in what looked like fabric, old, tattered, and stained with dirt and time. "Pull it out," the sheriff said quietly. The men worked together, gently drawing the object from the tree. As the cloth unraveled, the outline of a small body appeared. A baby perfectly preserved, eyes closed as if asleep. Harold's knees weakened. No, that can't be." The sheriff froze, breath caught in his throat. "Call the coroner, now." But before the deputy could move, Max stepped forward, sniffing the air. His nose brushed against the baby's tiny hand, and he whimpered softly, licking it once, then twice. Everyone watched, breathless. Then, impossibly, the baby's fingers twitched. The sheriff stumbled back. "Did you see that?" The deputy swore under his breath. It moved. I swear it moved. Harold's heart pounded in his chest. That's not possible. How could it? Then the baby's chest rose, a shallow breath escaping its lips, followed by a faint, fragile cry that pierced the silence of the woods. The sheriff dropped to his knees. Get the ambulance. Now. As sirens echoed faintly from afar, Harold sank beside the crying infant, tears streaming down his face. Max sat beside him, tail wagging slowly, his eyes soft and wet. When the medics arrived, they handled the baby with trembling hands. The doctor examined it quickly, disbelief spreading across his face. The vitals are weak but stable, he said. Whoever this child is, it's a miracle she's alive. They wrapped the baby in a clean blanket and carried her to the ambulance. Harold couldn't look away. He turned to Max, who was still staring at the tree, whining softly. You saved her, boy, Harold whispered. You saved her. The sheriff placed a hand on his shoulder. Mr. Bennett, I think you and your dog just uncovered something far bigger than we understand. Later that evening, the hospital buzzed with whispers. Reporters gathered, people prayed, and the story spread like wildfire. A baby found alive inside an old tree. Doctors couldn't explain it. The child had no signs of recent birth, no injuries, no decay. Her DNA revealed nothing. No records, no matches. She was a mystery. Harold visited the hospital every day, sitting quietly by the window, watching her sleep in the neonatal ward. He felt drawn to her, as if fate had tied their lives together in that strange moment under the oak. Max lay by his feet, calm and still, his eyes following every movement in the room. One evening, the nurse smiled gently. She cries less when you're around, she told Harold. Maybe she knows your voice. Harold chuckled softly. Maybe she just likes old fools and dogs. Days turned into weeks. The baby grew stronger. The police investigation turned up nothing. No missing child, no clues. The oak tree was examined by botanists and scientists, but no one could explain how a living infant could survive sealed within its trunk. Maybe it's not something we're meant to explain, the sheriff said quietly to Harold one night. Maybe it's just a miracle. The town began to call her the tree child. Churches lit candles. Children left flowers by the oak. People came from miles away to see the tree that birthed life. But to Harold, she was more than a miracle. She was a heartbeat that had brought his own life back to meaning. After weeks of paperwork and pleading, Harold was granted foster care of the child. He named her Grace. When he held her for the first time, she looked up at him with wide, blue eyes, calm and knowing. You've been waiting for someone, haven't you? He whispered. Well, I guess you found me. Max wagged his tail, leaning his head against Harold's knee. Years passed. Grace grew into a curious little girl with laughter that filled the house. Every time she passed the old oak, she would stop, press her tiny palm against the bark, and whisper something no one could quite hear. Talking to your old home again, Harold would tease. She'd smile, softly. It listens. When Grace turned 5, she fell sick for the first time, a strange fever the doctors couldn't explain. Harold stayed by her bedside, holding her hand as machines beeped softly. Don't you leave me, sweetheart, he whispered, tears in his eyes. She smiled faintly. Don't be sad, Grandpa Harold. Trees never die. They just change. He didn't understand what she meant, but her calmness broke him. That night, as rain fell against the window, the lights in the hospital flickered. Max lifted his head and whined, pacing near the door. Harold looked up just as Grace opened her eyes. Do you hear it? She whispered. Hear what, honey? The tree. It's calling me home. And with that, her breathing slowed, and stopped. Harold clutched her hand, sobbing. Max howled, a long, aching sound that shook the walls. Grace was gone. The next morning, the sheriff arrived at Harold's door, his face pale. You should come with me, he said softly. They drove to Hollow Trail. The oak tree, the same one that had once held Grace, had split open during the storm. Inside, glowing faintly through the hollow, were delicate strands of light that shimmered like veins. And at the center, carved by nature itself, was the shape of a tiny child, sleeping peacefully, her features carved perfectly into the wood. Harold fell to his knees, tears streaming down his face. The sheriff whispered, "Looks like she went home." Years later, the town still spoke of Grace, the girl from the tree. Pilgrims left flowers, children played near the roots, and the oak stood tall and bright even in the harshest winters. Harold grew old beside it, visiting every day with Max until the dog, too, passed peacefully one spring morning under the same tree. When Harold's time finally came, the townspeople buried him beneath the oak, beside his dog. And sometimes, when the wind passed through the branches, those who listened closely swore they could hear the laughter of a little girl, and the soft bark of a faithful friend, echoing through the leaves.